Hi, this is Ms. White, and welcome to Lesson 2.3 on Organizational Patterns. This is also sometimes called internal text structures. It's basically just the way the writer organizes their information, especially in nonfiction. Here's our learning target. Today I will determine text organizational patterns so that I can better understand what I read and know what to look for when researching or answering specific questions about a text. Just a little way to make things easier for you. I'll know I've got it when I've correctly identified 7 out of 8 hamburger texts. Okay, here's some vocab you should know. So organize is just when you arrange something into a particular order or structure. Maybe you arrange things on your desk, maybe you arrange your shoes, maybe you arrange your old dolls or your old art. What is something that you organize? Pattern. This is basically when something repeats. So it's an arrangement of things like lines, shapes, colors, numbers, or in this lesson, text features. So a pattern can be anything that is kind of something that repeats or something that's like a specific way of being arranged. Organizational pattern. So this is what we're studying today. The way text is organized to help the reader monitor comprehension. That means like it helps you figure out if you're understanding what the text is about. For example, cause and effect is an example of an organizational pattern. It's basically so that when you read, things kind of follow like a set way. When you write something, you don't have to like totally reinvent how it's organized. There are these ways that writers do it, and then as a reader, it kind of saves you time because you're like, oh, it's cause and effect. I get it. Okay, we're gonna go through a few of them, and I'll try to be fast so this video won't be 8 hours long. Okay, first one, concept definition. This is when you have something like a Wikipedia entry, like what is a zebra? Well, a zebra has stripes. In addition, it is similar to a horse. It is characterized by blah, blah, blah. You're just giving some examples about what something is. So if we're doing this for hamburger, what would you say is the definition of a hamburger? What does every hamburger have to have? Problem and solution. This is when you state a problem and list one or more solutions for the problem. You might see these signal words like therefore, but so, this led to, because, and consequently. If something doesn't have a solution, it's probably not problem solution. It might be cause and effect. So make sure when you're identifying this that there's actually like a way to fix something or a way to improve something. So if I was doing this for a hamburger, I would say, okay, my problem is my hamburger is too dry, and my solution could be the next time I make a hamburger, I'm going to put an ice cube in the middle because it helps it. I've read that it helps it keep from getting dried out. Cause and effect. So people often get these confused, problem, solution, and cause and effect. So let's see how they're different. This just shows how things happen because of other things. So when you see words like because, since, as a result, you might be like, ding, 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 cause and effect. Okay, so a cause and effect could be, I ate 20 hamburgers and the effect is I got a stomach ache. That is not problem and solution because getting a stomach ache isn't a solution. If I wrote something that was like, I ate 20 hamburgers and I got a stomach ache, so I decided to take some medicine for it and just take it easy. Maybe that would be problem solution instead. Okay, compare and contrast. This one you should be familiar with. This is saying how things are similar and different. And if you see these signal words, you might be looking at something that's compare and contrast. So another thing to remember with compare and contrast is that you'll often have a Venn diagram if you're drawing this out. Like if you're drawing out the facts, it's like What does a hamburger have that's different from a hot dog? What do they have in common? If you're reading something that's like that, like saying how two things are different and also the same, it's gonna be compare and contrast. Chronological or sequential. We say both of these words for chronological, but chrono means time, so chronological means in time order. When you're reading something like before, after, earlier, later, then, now, it might be chronological, but it could also be cause and effect. So just make sure it's listing a lot of things in order. Like you see this a lot in history because it has to do with timelines. Whenever you're talking about the history of something, it's often, not always, chronological. So if you're giving the history of a hamburger, like, oh, in 1822, the German Baron blah 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 brought the hamburger to America. Like, I don't actually know the history of a hamburger, but you could say like McDonald's was invented in 1945 and make a timeline about the history of the hamburger. Okay, process. This is when you're giving a series of steps. So this will also be like first, second, third, but it's gonna say like how something happens or how to make something. So it's different from chronological because it's not like facts or events. It's more like how something works. So for example, if you had a cookbook and you were saying how to make a hamburger, you'd be like, step 1, get out the meat. Step 2, shape the meat into a patty. Step 3, pick your toppings. Like, it would go through them in order, but it's more process because it's how to do it. The next one is listing or enumeration. This is when there are numbers, but they can be in any order. Because a list, like, it doesn't really matter what comes first. You might see these words first, second, or third, but for example, it could be like toppings. Like you go to Burger King and you can pick the toppings. It doesn't matter whether you say lettuce first or tomato first. No, it's just a list. So it's okay if the list is out of order. Okay, last one. Whew. Generalization or principle. This is when you talk about something like, it's almost like concept definition, but it's a little different because you're talking about usually, generally, typically. All of these words kind of mean like, not all the time, but most of the time. So you could be like, generally, hamburgers are inexpensive. So yeah, like you can buy a hamburger for pretty cheap, but I know that there are $200 hamburgers. So I'm not saying all hamburgers are cheap. I'm saying generally they are. You could say generally they are fatty, like they have a lot of fat, but not always. Like I eat veggie burgers and some of those don't have a lot of fat in them. So that's what generally means. And that's all. You're going to be reading some text and saying what you think they are and why, and that will be your mission. Thanks for watching.